from the first time I heard him speak, I was in awe with the information that he had and the dates and the memory, and boy, he just kept rattling them off. And I came to the conclusion, my own opinion, that this man knows more about American politics than almost any other American. And it's just awesome, and you'll have the same opinion when he's done. So thank you, Trevor, for coming, and welcome back.
Well, thanks very much, Larry, and thanks to everybody for coming today. Can you all hear me down the back okay?
Yeah.
Can you understand the southern accent all right?
Okay.
Well, very southern, deep south.
Deep
south. So, before I start, any refugees from Los Angeles here tonight? One or two, yeah, just maybe made a good decision. Well, I was in Los Angeles a while back, and I love street food. And I bought some food from a vendor. He looked at me and he said, "You have an accent. Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from New Zealand." He said, "Well, where's that?"
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
So to make it really, really simple for him, I said, "Look, it's down near Australia." He said, "Where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from."
You go,
You can understand why they vote like they do down there, right? So, people ask me all the time why I would care about America. I come from New Zealand. It's supposed to be a safe country, right? Well, it's not. But I care about America for two simple reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was facing invasion during World War II by the Imperial Japanese Army. And if it hadn't been for the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway, we would have been done, folks. That's a very strong memory even today. The second reason is related, but it's a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If you ever lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger right now, if that is allowed to continue, we'll soon be living in a world run out of Moscow and Beijing and Tehran and Havana. And is that the kind of world you want to leave to your kids, folks? No. So anybody who cares about liberty has to care about America. This is the last stand here. Now, my big deal is national security. But the part of it we don't often think about. Now, has anybody here been in the military, or maybe still in the military, and taken that famous oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and what? Domestic, right? And which are more dangerous, people? A foreign enemy in a uniform with a gun pointed at you, or a domestic enemy in a suit and tie in your Congress trashing your Constitution every chance they get? Which is more dangerous, folks? Domestic by a country mile. And we've been ignoring them for 50 years now. Every year, every day, you send your brave sons and daughters overseas to fight horrible foreign enemies. And every day, they are betrayed by domestic enemies behind their backs. If you're going to send your sons and daughters overseas, don't you owe it to them to elect people who at least have their back?
Yes.
We do.
That's our responsibility, people. They are betrayed since the Vietnam War, since the Korean War. Your troops have been betrayed in almost every single war. Every single one. Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan. You know, you send your troops over there, you tie their hands behind their backs. They're not allowed to shoot unless they get a written authorization from a JAG officer, just about. You know, which is horrific. So, but what if, you know, so has anybody ever had to undergo any form of, get a security clearance for any sort of government job or position? Yeah, I thought you would. So there's a few of you here have had security clearances, right? You apply for a job, they check you out, they go through your family background, they look at criminal convictions, overseas travel, because they need to know you're a trustworthy person. Because one traitor can cost you a battle. One traitor can cost you a war. You know, you imagine had Benedict Arnold been successful when he tried to betray George Washington, how different your history would have been, folks. So, but what if you're a young Marxist radical who hangs around with the local Communist Party or the local Democratic Socialists of America or the local Muslim Brotherhood? I don't know, someone like Barbara Lee or Nancy Pelosi or Barbara Boxer or Dianne Feinstein or Army Bera or Garamendi. You know, you hang around with the local communists and they get you, put a suit and tie on you, and they get you elected to Congress, where you may serve on the Homeland Security Committee or the Armed Services Committee. How much of a background check do you need for that one, folks? Zero. Nothing. At all. Nothing. So do you think maybe the Iranians know about this? And the Russians and the Chinese and the Venezuelans and the Cubans and the Muslim Brotherhood? But they wouldn't use that weakness against you, would they? Surely not. That would be unethical, wouldn't it? So there are no background checks in Congress at all. None. Zero. The most powerful legislators on the planet, with access to all kinds of money and all kinds of secrets and zero background checks. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? Well, how's that been working out in recent times? Not so good? But don't worry, don't panic, don't worry, because there's no way that communists or Islamists or traitors or spies could ever get into your government, because you have an organisation specifically there to stop that happening. That is called the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Do you feel better now? If I put your mind at rest now, you're okay, because you know the FBI has got your back. Well, guess what, people? The FBI, unfortunately, which once was a great organisation, is now working for the other team. We've seen that. See, the FBI's got another problem, because there are still some good guys in there, but they answer to the Judiciary Committee in your Congress. That's the most powerful committee in the US Congress. And it oversees the FBI and the Justice Department. And how it's supposed to work is the FBI arrests the bad guys and the Justice Department is supposed to prosecute them. Well, how's that been going in recent times, folks? You know, the fox is guarding the hen house now, is it not? So, the FBI is overseen by the Judiciary Committee. Well, who remembers John Conyers from Michigan? The Congressman John Conyers, right? He was in Congress, I think, 140, 160 years in total. You know, he was there forever, since the 60s. And for 40 years, he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is the man who abolished your House Un-American Activities Committee, one of your last lines of defense against internal subversion. John Conyers, bumbling old fool that he was one of the most treasonous and dangerous congressmen ever to serve in your Congress. That man had a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA. He had 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America. He was a card-carrying member of it. And that's a more communist organization than the Communist Party. He was actively involved with the Workers' World Party, the people who are ripping down statues in North Carolina and Louisiana. They support North Korea and Cuba and Iran. He was a big-time supporter of several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. And if you're not sure who the Muslim Brotherhood are, they were a semi-secret society that started out in Egypt in 1929. And their goal was worldwide Islam. And during World War II, they worked with the Nazis. And after World War II, they worked with the Soviet KGB. They are the father of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. But they in this country, they work legally through the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Muslim Student Association, which is a branch in UC Davis, and they are all over your country, folks. And when some of your Republican congressmen tried to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist organization, here's John Conyers. You can see him in my movie, in his own words. No, we shouldn't go after the Muslim Brotherhood. They've given up violence. They're a peaceful social service agency now. We should work with them, not against them. John Conyers was a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist. As hardcore as you can get, folks, yet for 40 years he oversaw the Judiciary Committee and the FBI.
No wonder they're all bad.
Now, also on that committee until recently was a woman called Judy Chu from California, from San Gabriel Valley, down south. Judy Chu, for 30 years, has been a supporter of the Communist Workers' Party, the most militant pro-Chinese Communist Party in America during their heyday. They've folded now, but she still works with former members of them right now. And when you should see Judy Chu, check her out on C-SPAN. Whenever the FBI arrests one of the more than 25,000 Chinese spies currently working in this country, she's on their case. You are racist, she says. You're a racist organization. You're only persecuting these people because you hate Asians. And she's arranged for sensitivity training for these cruel FBI agents so they don't persecute these poor Chinese spies any longer. Now, the current committee, the current leader of the Judiciary Committee is a man called Jerry Nadler. Okay? The man who twice tried to impeach President Trump. Well, Jerry Nadler, remember when the FBI was out there last year trying to track down Black Lives Matter protesters? They didn't find very many, but they could find people who took selfies in the White House like crazy. In the Capitol building, I mean. Well, it just happens, see, Jerry Nadler, he got a woman sprung from jail back a few years back. Under Bill Clinton, there was a woman called Susan Rosenberg, who was a former Weather Underground terrorist leader and had got a 54-year jail sentence for accessory to murder and possession of explosives. And Jerry Nadler got her pardoned by Bill Clinton. That woman now serves on the board of the fundraising arm of Black Lives Matter. So the FBI was out there trying to find the friends of their boss. You think that might have dampened their enthusiasm a little bit? See, the FBI has not gone after congressmen for political crimes since at least World War II. They'll go after them for bribery and corruption, but not for espionage, not for subversion, not for working for the other side. None of that. You're home free. And they won't even go after communists now. They haven't gone after communists for nearly 15 years now, because every time you arrest a communist in America, you find a Democrat behind them. And that's very politically embarrassing. So just imagine the FBI wakes up one day and they think, well, there's at least 100 members of Congress working for the other team. There's 25 members of the US Senate who couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus in this county. That's the reason we've got a nuclear deal with Iran. That's why we've got a Green New Deal. That's why we have Obamacare and open borders. They are wrecking the country. We better do something. Let's go to the Judiciary Committee. Let's go to Mrs. Chu and Mr. Nadler. Mrs. Chu, Mr. Nadler, we need to investigate at least 100 of your colleagues for working against the country. Do you mind? And by the way, Mrs. Chu, by the way, Mr. Nadler, you're both on the list. Is that all right? What do you think's going to happen to their budget next year, folks? Why do you think the FBI did nothing when Hillary Clinton was caught dead to rights and massive security breaches? Because she was going to be their boss, folks. They thought she was going to get elected. And she could destroy them. See, this is a problem in your Congress. There's no background checks. The media doesn't touch the left. And the FBI doesn't dare touch them. The FBI they are scot-free. Once they're in there, unless you're a Republican or a Conservative, you're scot-free. You look, not far from here, Eric Swalwell, right? Yeah. Sleeping with a communist Chinese spy. She befriended him. She helped to get him elected. He was on the Dublin City Council. Now he's in Congress. She got him elected. A Chinese spy. They asked Nancy Pelosi to take him off the Intelligence Committee where he now serves. And she refuses to do it. Because she is a communist too, people. She's had communist connections her whole life. Her father was connected to both the Communist Party and the Mafia. So she's not going to do anything. There's a great photo online of Christine Fong, the Chinese spy, sleeping with Swalwell at the Chinese consulate with the Chinese ambassador with a man called Russell Lowe. That's the Chinese spy who worked for Dianne Feinstein for 20 years. Not as her driver, as she said, as her office manager. He was getting Defense Department documents across his desk for years. Your Congress and Senate is completely penetrated by the Chinese, the Iranians, the Cubans, and the Russians. Ratcliffe, Trump's intelligence advisor, said the Chinese had compromised and blackmailed so many American congressmen, they can now determine which legislation goes through your Congress and which doesn't. That should horrify everybody. And that got about 1 hour's play on the news cycle and disappeared forever. We are living right now in the Harris-Obama China administration. That's what we're living in right now. But isn't it great that you finally got a moderate Democrat in the White House?
Oh boy.
Isn't that all right? Isn't that good? We finally got an old-fashioned, blue-collar, straight-up Harry Truman Democrat. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, well that's what the Washington Post says. That's what the New York Times says. So it must be true, right? Let me tell you a couple of stories about Uncle Joe, right? Back in 1972, he was a 29-year-old city councillor in Wilmington, Delaware. He was nobody. And he decided to run for US Senate against a 4-term Republican incumbent with an 80% approval rating in a state that was solidly Republican at the time. You'd think that would be a suicide mission, right?
Yeah, right.
But he won. He won it. And the reason he won is because he was backed by an organisation called the Council for a Livable World. Okay? You can look it up, still active, and I'll tell you about them in a minute. But I'll go back, see, Joe Biden was recruited by the president of the Council for a Livable World at the time, a former senator from Tennessee, a man called Albert Gore Sr. Some of you might have heard of his son. He invented the internet and global warming. You know the one? Okay. So Albert Gore Sr. recruited Biden. He thought he was a nice, progressive young man. And he got a whole bunch of money for him, and a whole bunch of Democrat endorsements from all over the country, and a whole bunch of volunteers. And he won. He won the election. Now, won with the help of the Council for a Livable World. Now, in my movie again, you've got Joe Biden talking about his relationship at the 50th anniversary of the Council for a Livable World in 2012. He talks about his relationship with that organization. You were with me, he says. You got me elected. You were with me all through my career. You guided me when I was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. You helped Obama and I negotiate the START treaty with Russia. The treaty that was so good for Putin and so disastrous for America that Donald Trump had to unilaterally cancel it. And now Biden is putting back in place. Okay? Gives the Russians massive advantage over you in nuclear weapons. Right? So, well, it just turns out that the man who founded the Council for a Livable World was a man called Leo Silad. He was a Hungarian, not anything like our friend here. This man was a Hungarian communist, okay? And he was a supporter of Bela Kun, the communist who took over Hungary briefly after World War I. He fled Hungary, came to America, became a nuclear physicist, and he was a top scientist on the Manhattan Project, the project that developed your atomic weapon to defeat the Japanese. It was riddled with communists. And this head of security at the Manhattan Project wanted to fire Silad because he knew he was a communist, but he was one of the top guys. He was just too valuable. So they left him in place. Well, after the war, Silad became an anti-nuclear campaigner. And he set up the Council for a Livable World for this purpose. They got some money together and they went into the small states, because you can elect a senator from a small state very cheaply, from New Hampshire or Rhode Island or Vermont or whatever. And so they have picked out all these young left-wingers and they got them elected to the US Senate. And this was the proposition. We will elect you. We will guide you. We will staff you. We will help you. We will fund you. All you have to do is work for total US nuclear and military disarmament. Your job is to destroy the US military. And they've elected over 200 senators to do that, folks. And Joe Biden was one of their first. And it turns out that Leo Silad just wasn't an anti-nuclear campaigner. Pavel Sudoplatov, a former Soviet intelligence officer under Beria and Stalin, wrote in his book in 1984 that Leo Silad was a fully recruited Soviet agent. And that he'd been passed down, the word had come down from Stalin and Beria, stop your spying, Mr. Silad. Instead, use your political influence to work for US nuclear disarmament. Meaning that if we can disarm the United States, we can either destroy the United States in a nuclear attack or blackmail them into surrender. Joe Biden owes his job to, and I forgot a little point. Al Gore Sr. was the protege of a man called Armand Hammer. Armand Hammer was the leading American Soviet agent of the early 20th century, the man who kept the Bolshevik Revolution alive. Joe Biden owes his job to two Soviet agents. He has worked his entire political career to the advantage of the Soviet Union, Russia, China, and Iran. He would be one of the biggest traitors to ever serve in the US Senate, but he's a moderate Democrat. Okay?
Yeah, right.
He is going to destroy your military.
Yep.
He has already appointed 4 members of the Council for a Livable World to key disarmament positions. And you know Mr. Garrison, Bishop Garrison, the man who's been appointed to purge your military of right-wing extremists and white supremacists? You know the one? He is a board member of the Council for a Livable World. You got a board member of a Soviet front group now purging your military right when Russia and China are getting ready to attack. How serious can it get, folks? Pretty darn serious, people. Pretty darn serious. This is existential. China doesn't want to just economically dominate you. They want to occupy your land, folks. They are starving for land and they're looking at you to take it down. Simple as that. And they've got a huge number of your Congress members and senators on their payroll.
Right and left.
Right and left. You know, what they do. It's called mice. This is how they get your people. Mice: money, ideology, compromise, ego. Money, they buy Republicans. Ideology, the Democrats are communists. Sympathetic. Compromise, they take them to a trip overseas, photograph them with a prostitute, whatever. They've got them compromised, like Eric Swalwell. Ego, they appeal to their ego, like the Al Gores of the world. You know, he's just ego-driven. You know, the Chuck Schumers of the world. This is how they get them. And they've got a whole big chunk of them, folks. You know, if we had straight patriots in the Congress now, we would be flying. You know, Putin would be gone, the Communist Party of China would be over, and the world would be free, and we'd be heading for a period of great liberty and prosperity. But the big problem is you've got traitors in your Congress and your Senate, and some of them are working for our side, supposedly. Give you one more example. He's in here. Again, Andre Carson, one of your 3 Muslim members of Congress. I've got him here on tape at a Muslim Brotherhood front group in Connecticut in 2012. He gets up in front of the audience, and this is what he says. I've been told there's some spies here today. There's people in the audience checking us out because they believe we are here plotting to destroy this country. Well, I say to you people undercover, I say to you spies, Allah will not allow you to stop us. This man currently serves on the Intelligence Committee overseeing the CIA, the FBI, NSA, DEA, all 16 of your intelligence agencies. So I've got some more good news for you, people. We're currently in World War III with China. Okay? Now, Trump put tariffs on Chinese goods in May 2019. And Xinhua news agency, the Chinese news agency, said our response to Mr. Trump's aggression is to declare people's war on the United States. So people say, well, that means they're going to put tariffs on American goods. Big deal, so what? People's war is a Maoist term from Mao Zedong. It means to destroy your enemy by every means possible before your soldiers even march. It is selling fentanyl to your kids. It is buying your politicians. It's stealing your technology. And it's biological warfare.
Yes.
Now, we don't know 100% sure that the COVID was deliberately released from the biological weapons lab. I would say it's probably only about 99.999% certain. But we know 100% certain they deliberately spread it. Absolutely they did. And it was timed for election year. Absolutely timed. See, normally in an election, in a pandemic, you quarantine the sick, then everybody else goes about their business. That's what they did with typhoid, malaria, all the other diseases, smallpox. That's how they did it. And it worked. But we were told by the World Health Organization we couldn't do that because there was evidence that people without symptoms were transmitting, and we didn't have testing, so if we didn't shut everything down, we'd have 2 million dead Americans by Christmas. So Donald Trump was faced with the proposition, I either follow their guidelines, though he knew it was all garbage, or he would get blamed for every dead grandmother right up till the election. That was his choice. So he did what he had to do. Well, it turns out the head of the World Health Organization, Mr. Tedros, if you look at his CV, he's the former leader of that country's Marxist-Leninist, Maoist, pro-Chinese Communist Party, completely in their pocket. The COVID was a military operation to do three things. First, to wreck your economy. 2, to destroy your president. 3, to wreck your military budget. And already 31 Democrats, led by Barbara Lee from California, who's been to Cuba 22 times, has written a letter to the Armed Services Committee demanding massive defence budget cuts in the next budget go-round. Their job is to destroy your military. And if they do that, who runs the world from that point, folks?
China, Cuba.
China, Russia, Cuba, Iran. That's it. This is a war, people. So then we're starting to recover from the COVID, just starting to ease out in some of the red states. We get hit with massive Black Lives Matter rioting, okay? All because George Floyd got killed in Minneapolis. No, this was planned since 2016. They know 1,000 people get killed by cops every year. 99% of them in perfectly justifiable circumstances. But they know they're going to get a black victim, and they know there's going to be a bit of controversy. They tried to start the rioting with the young black jogger who was killed in Atlanta, didn't quite fire. They tried to start it when a young black woman was killed in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, it didn't quite fire. George Floyd was a gift because it's so public, and was right in Minneapolis, which is the headquarters of the group that organised the rioting, the pro-Chinese Communist Party called Freedom Road Socialist Organisation. The leader of Freedom Road, a woman called Steph Yorick, publicly declared in Washington, D.C., the day that Trump was inaugurated, January 20th, 2017, that their job was to bring down President Trump by making this country ungovernable. Freedom Road Socialist Organisation, the organisation that burned Minneapolis, was run by Steph Yorick. No, by Jess Sundin, the wife of Steph Yorick. I've got it on tape, admitting the joy she felt when Precinct 3 was burnt to the ground. That the violence and looting and arson was an integral part of the movement. I've got it admitting this. And I've released it. It's out there. Freedom Road Socialist Organisation, which is completely pro-China. They burnt Minneapolis and Kenosha. They burnt Houston and Dallas, Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami, and one other city in Florida. They burnt Salt Lake City, they burnt Tucson, they burnt East LA, and they burnt San Jose. They did that rioting. The rest of it was done by another pro-Chinese Communist Party called Liberation Road. Liberation Road has a front group. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Black Lives Matter. They burnt the other cities. Now, Liberation Road, Black Lives Matter, was set up by Alishia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patriots, right? All three of them Liberation Road affiliates. But the main one, Alishia Garza, is very close friends with a young man called Alex Tom. Alex Tom was the head of the Chinese Progressive Association in San Francisco, which runs San Francisco. They run Chinatown, they control the voting in San Francisco. Nobody gets elected to the Board of Supervisors there without their blessing. So Alex Tom was the chairman of the Chinese Progressive Association. He was also the head of a group called Asians for Black Lives. Asians for Black Lives controls Black Lives Matter. He and Alishia Garza are like that. They've been friends since their UC San Diego days in the 90s. Alishia Garza has actively participated in the Chinese Progressive Association. And I've got on tape Alex Tom talking about his relationship with the Chinese consulate and how he runs his messaging past Chinese officials. Black Lives Matter is a communist Chinese operation, folks. They're tied to China, they're tied to Vietnam, they're tied to the Palestinian rebels in the burning Israel right now, and they're tied to Venezuela and Cuba. It's a 100% communist operation. And you got Republicans taking the knee to these people. 100% communist. 100%. And just by the way, Alishia Garza has another very close friend, a young woman called Latifah Simon, who serves on the BART board in San Francisco, was the chairman, Bay Area Rapid Transport. And she's got a very close friend, Alishia Garza, Patrice Kalur, what's her name? Latifah Simon used to be involved with a group, had a lot of friends in a group called Storm, standing together to organize a revolutionary movement. Remember Van Jones? Yep. That's his communist group, right? So she was part of that. But she got picked up and mentored and brought out of the mean streets and made what she is today. She's on the board of the Akinati Foundation, on the board of BART, and the woman who mentored her, her best friend, some of you may have heard of her. That's a woman called Kamala Harris. Yeah. Kamala Harris, Alishia Garza, Latifah Simon are best buddies. Kamala Harris is the Black Lives Matter vice president. She's really the president. And she has a Chinese background that goes back to her childhood. Her father was a Marxist. Her mother was a Marxist. She was mentored by a very rich Marxist from San Francisco called Stephen Phillips, part of the Golden West Savings and Loan fortune. He married into that fortune. Here's the man who got Obama ahead of Hillary Clinton in 2008. He gave you Cory Booker in the US Senate. He was behind Andrew Gillum, who almost won, the communist who almost won the governorship of Florida, and is behind Stacey Abrams, who thinks she's the governor of Georgia. Yeah. But Kamala Harris is completely his protege. She was made, I was telling people, and you can, verify that, I was telling people 3 years ago that Kamala Harris was going to be the candidate. Because I knew who was backing her. It was decided years ago. The same people who gave you Obama gave you Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. And I lost a lot of steak dinners when she bowed out before Christmas. But I'm going back to claim them back because the plan was always to get her in. Mm-hmm. Always. She was the chosen one. Pro-Chinese, perfect candidate for the hard left. And they're leaving Biden in there right now because she's a lot more scary than Biden. And when he can no longer say his name, they will put her in.
They're working on it now.
Or whatever, or pretend one of us assassinates him. That's more likely. False flag, something like that. That would be the perfect excuse to crack down on people like us. And just by the way, anybody, you're in any Facebook group or anybody who starts talking about we're going to have a revolution, we're going to start fighting, we got all the guns, get out of there because they're either an idiot or they're an FBI provocateur trying to get your name. Keep away from anybody who talks like that. They're going to lead you into jail at best. We can only win this peacefully, folks. We can only win it peacefully because if we get in a civil war here, the Chinese and the Russians are going to be on our soil before you know it. And they're just hoping some hotheads on our side provoke some incidents. They're just hoping. We're going to be so disciplined. So purposeful and disciplined. So that's where we are, folks. We're in World War III. So this is what's happening. The Chinese are killing your kids with fentanyl. They're buying up your politicians. They're buying up your infrastructure and your land and your companies. They're stealing your technology. They have wrecked your economy with the disease they deliberately spread. They burnt 100 of your cities and they stole your election. But the good news is this: you can buy cheap crap in Walmart. That's the deal you got, folks. That is the deal. You know, this is the deal that Kissinger and Nixon sold you. Let's send all of our industry to China. Let's just get rid of all these high-paying union guys out in the Midwest and the steel mills and the factories. Let's just get rid of all of them, send all of it to China. We'll make tons of money and they'll become our friends. They'll become democratic like us. That was the deal we were sold, folks. So we gutted our industry to give it to China to make them our enemy. Powerful enemy. 30 years ago, they couldn't even threaten Vietnam or the Philippines. Now they're on the verge of threatening or destroying us. And that scam went on under every American president, Republican, Democrat, for 30 years until Donald J. Trump called it out. Till that man stood up for America. And that's why they had to take him out. Because if they knew if they didn't do that, he would do to them what Reagan did to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. That's why they had to take him out. And the great tragedy is, if he got a second term, we would have ended the Communist Party of China. You would have had a free China contributing to the world rather than being a drain on the world. You would have put the dictators all over the world on the back foot. We would have had an era of prosperity and freedom like you've never seen. And now all our allies are freaking out because China has its friend in the White House. Right now. So what do we do, people? Because if I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. Okay? But I'm not. I'm here. Because I think there is great hope for America. 80 million people voting for Trump after 4 years of incessant hatred and vilification from the press shows me the character of this country, folks. It shows me the depth of patriotism that still exists here. And that's what gives me hope and keeps me in the fight, people. Now, I wrote an article for the Epoch Times recently called A New Zealander's 9 Starter Steps for Saving America from Socialism. General Flynn put it on Parler, Sidney Powell put it out there, got 13,500 shares on Epoch Times. It was pretty darn popular. And I'd just like to go through some of the points, and I hope you will look the article up for yourself. And it's not the answer for everything, but it's concrete things we can do at local and state level as individuals to start the pushback. The first step was face reality. You know, there's no secret military in control. The military is on the other side now, unfortunately, led by the other side. Obama had 8 years to make sure that happened. Got rid of 200 patriotic generals. So the military's not going to help us, unfortunately. We got to save the military. We got to save Trump. Trump can't save us. The military can't save us. We got to save them. Keep them together till at least 2022. So we've got to face reality. You know, Trump's not going to come back into office on September the 2nd or October the 14th or December the 18th or whatever they tell you. That is all propaganda designed to keep you on your backsides and not doing anything. And it worked pretty darn well, unfortunately. A whole lot of people said, I'm not going to go and help Trump in the election. He's got a plan, don't worry, it's all good. I'm going bass fishing today. And that was what it was all for. Now, so the second thing is there's no violent solution to this. None. We got to do this peacefully. Third thing is election integrity is absolutely paramount. Now, there's 30 red states still in this country. 30 states controlled by Republican legislatures. Some have Democrat governors, but some of them have vetoes that can override those Democrat governors. So there's 30 states who are now working on cleaning up their election integrity. And we're going to be putting pressure on this. You've got to do this at local level. You're not going to be able to affect California, but you can get behind the Election Integrity Project. You can make sure your own elections locally are clean. Because you've got to fortify your local areas here. You've got to take back the county commissions. You've got to make sure you get good sheriffs. Because that's all you got here in California. You've got to fortify rural conservative California. You've got to get Trump to build a border wall around Solano County or something. You know, keep those San Franciscans out of here. Okay?
Amen.
But you've got to fortify your local areas. And look, there's a lot of legislation going through now to clean up the elections, but they're missing two key things. A, massive penalties for anybody caught committing vote fraud. Because vote fraud's worse than bank robbery, people. Right? It's right up there with treason as far as I'm concerned. It is that close to treason. Because it's destroying your system, your freedom. And you've got to be getting rid of voting machines everywhere. No machines, paper ballots, voter ID. I don't care if your voting machine is blockchain. It can't be hacked. I don't care. The fact is, a whole bunch of our people don't trust them. And they won't vote because they won't trust the election. So we will lose every darn election. This is what happened in Georgia. We lost the 2 Senate seats. Mitch McConnell blamed Trump for it. The reason we lost it is because Mitch McConnell wouldn't fight for the election, too busy making money with China. Wouldn't fight for the election. And so a whole bunch of Georgia Republicans said, well, this one's going to be as crooked as the last. I'm going to go fishing that day. That's why we lost. And if we don't clean that up and get rid of voting machines, 10 to 20% of our people are going to stay home. And what's going to happen then? Not hard to figure out, is it? We're going to lose everything. The third thing, now, you got to work towards this. This is California. There's only 5 states in America that have closed primaries. Okay, and what do I mean by that? In California, you have a Republican primary, right? Well, I don't know if you do with the top 2. I'm not sure how it works now. Yeah, okay, well, top 2, well, you got to get rid of that for a start. That's even worse. But most states, there's only 5 that have completely closed primaries. Meaning, if you have a Republican primary, you've got 4 or 5 candidates in it, the Democrats and the Communists can come and vote in your primary. And guess who they vote for, people? Do they vote for the most conservative candidate? Do they vote for the Patriot? Or do they vote for the wimpiest rhino they possibly can?
Wimpiest rhino.
Absolutely they do. So we've got to close the primaries in every red state. That's why you've got Lisa Murkowski, the total traitor up in Alaska, posing as a Republican because they have open primaries and the communists voted for her. That's why you've got Lindsey Graham, who's a total wimp in South Carolina, a very conservative state, but they got a wimp like him because they have open primaries. The rhinos and the left love open primaries. That's how they keep the rhinos in power. Close your primaries. Get rid of top 2. Those should be your 2 biggest priorities in this state. Fourth thing is, we got to build a compact of free states. We got to have 30 states all working together to basically tell the federal government to take a hike.
Thank you.
30 states. You got red states stretching from the Arctic Circle, Alaska, all the way right to the middle of this country, right down to the Gulf of Mexico and the Florida Keys. Cuts the country right in two. 30 states. Now, I'm not talking secession. I'm talking building a nation within a nation. Get the 30 states working together to tell the federal government out of our states. Under the 10th Amendment, the federal government serves at the pleasure of the states, not the other way around. You are all guaranteed a Republican form of government, a representative form of government. If you are not being given that, the states have a right to say, out of here. The states have a right to say, we will not take any unconstitutional directives. recently, Joe Biden told my governor, Ron DeSantis, that he had to close his restaurants in Florida. And Ron DeSantis politely told him he would not do that. Some people say it wasn't so polite, but, I won't go there. And Biden said, well, we might have to cut air travel into Florida, even road travel into Florida. Well, he might do that to Florida, but he couldn't do it to Florida and Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and South Carolina and Oklahoma and Arkansas and Texas and Idaho and Iowa and North Dakota and South Dakota and Kansas and Missouri, all the way up to Alaska. He couldn't do it to 30 states.
Right.
30 states could band together and say, the federal government, you're not taking our guns, you're not taking our religious liberties, you're not taking our freedom of speech, and you're not going to control our elections. So we're already seeing that starting to happen. There's already 20 states wrote to Biden recently, said, if you come and try and go for our elections, there's going to be trouble. They said that to him straight up. The next thing we've got to do, and read the articles to go into a bit more detail, we've got to form a federation, nationwide. And the other thing you do, you bring in the red counties of the blue states into this federation. People like you. That's 80% of America, folks. 80% of America that does the work, that has the water, that has the farms, that actually produces stuff, are being bossed around by that 5% on the coast that does nothing. Why is that allowed to continue, folks? You've got to bring the states together as a block. Now, also, you've got to build a federation all over the country, an America First federation. Doesn't mean you give up your local sovereignty. You just got to start working together nationally with these other groups. And already there's hundreds of new groups springing up. It's like the Tea Party all over again, folks. Because you've got people sitting at home for the last year reading their kids' textbooks.
Yeah.
See, this is what my kid is learning. Are you kidding me? And I'm seeing groups spring up everywhere. See, the left has a group. It's called Our Revolution, run by the Communist Party and Democratic Socialists of America. They got 600 branches in all 50 states. And they're not part of the Democratic Party, but they vote in the Democratic primaries. And they vote for the communists. That's why you've got AOC and Rashida Tlaib, because Our Revolution goes into the Democratic primaries and makes sure the communist wins. Well, Trump is already drawing up a whole list of rhinos to get rid of, and a whole bunch of candidates that he is endorsing. We have to have everybody in the Republican primaries, everybody we can, to take advantage of that opportunity. 80 million MAGA people voting out every rhino scumbag and bringing in a whole bunch of patriots. We can take over the GOP completely in 2022, folks.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
And that's already happened. It's already half done, On the RNC right now, 70% of the RNC are MAGA or Tea Party people. 70%. You've already got the majority, folks. You just need to... I'll take questions later, sir. You need to keep going. You're on the right track. The other thing we got to do, it's a couple more, but I'll go into one of them. Boycott, big time. You have the money, people.
Yeah.
The first thing, 80 million MAGA people should boycott everything that comes from the Communist Party of China. Everything. Don't buy anything Chinese made. Buying Chinese made today is like buying Nazi Germany in 1938. Look, this is how bad it got. The companies that control your military pensions, the pensions of your soldiers and Marines and Airmen and Navy, were going to invest all of that money with Chinese companies. Companies tied to the People's Liberation Army, so that they could build more guns and bombs to kill the people that paid for them. And Trump had to sign an executive order to stop that happening, people. Well, what do you think Biden's going to be doing?
Oh, he's gonna took it off.
So this is, we got to, as our own purchasing power, we got to stop buying from our enemies. Look, and locally too, draw up lists of every business in your area that's patriotic and every business that's not. And all of your money goes to the Patriots and none goes to the enemy. I went to get some barbecue today, right? I love barbecue. And I walked up to the local barbecue place and here's a Black Lives Matter sign in the window. So I went in to walk in the door and I was going to tell that owner, I am never going to buy your stuff while you support communists. But unfortunately, it was closed. But I was going to do it. You got to go and tell them, you know.
Yeah.
Tell them why you're not buying from them. Trump's got the great idea. When they tried to clamp down on Georgia for having fair elections, you got UPS, you got the Major Baseball League, you got Coke, all saying we're going to pull out of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to pull out of them. We're going to boycott all of those companies. 80 million MAGA people boycotting those companies. And this is what I suggest too. This is what Alinsky would do. You pick one and you freeze it. Bed Bath & Beyond, right? They said that your president tried to start a riot on January the 6th. Total lie. And they refused to stop Mike Lindell's pillows as a result. Well, Bed Bath & Beyond is in trouble. They're not doing well. Let's starting this month, 80 million MAGA people, no more Bed Bath & Beyond. None. And you go and buy your wedding presents for your friends from Mike Lindell. Buy them a sheet, buy them a pillow. You boycott and you Buycott. You buy from your friends and you boycott your enemies. That's how they got the British out of India. The Indians got the British out of India by boycotting British goods. No revolution, no violence, just boycotting British goods. We have the money, folks. We have the purchasing power. We've got to be intelligent about how we use it. Already this is happening all over the country, folks. The boycotts are going on now. We're going to boycott everybody who's our enemy and put all our money with our friends. And we got the money, folks. So this is where we are, people. There's a few more points, but I won't go into them now. This is where we are. We're in World War III, and we are in a communist revolution right now. The thing is, we've got 80 million patriots in our side. We've got purchasing power, and we've got tough people willing to stand up for their country. The Tea Party has saved America several times in the past, folks. Remind me to tell my Tea Party saving America story in the question times. Tea Party saved America, and they're going to be part of saving it again. Because you're the backbone of the Patriot movement now, folks. You really are the guidance. Because a lot of you say, well, we're a little bit older, some of us. And the younger people, see, this is the role of the older generation. This is the role of grandparents. The role of grandparents and the older generation is to teach the young kids about the country, to teach them about patriotism, to teach them the heritage of this country. That's your role, because you know that nobody listens to their parents, right? But they will listen to their grandparents. They do. And why? This is a bit cynical. Why do grandchildren and grandparents have such a great relationship often? Because they have a common enemy. A little bit cynical, but there's a little bit of truth in that, isn't it? So this is the role. So this is what I'm saying to you. I know what you do. I know many of you for 10 years or more, 30 years some of you, have been working in your civic responsibilities, trying to do the best you can for your communities. And why do you do it? You tell me if I'm right. You do this year after year after year for two reasons. Because you love your country and you love your kids. Is that why you do it?
Yes.
Well, I'm asking you to double down. I know what you've been through. Year after year, putting up yard signs, knocking on doors, making phone calls, going to meetings, writing out checks, year after year after year after year, with very little thanks. And then you get President Trump elected. And then you work like crazy to get him re-elected. And I know how bitter it is when you work for your champion and he loses fair and square. That's bitter. But when you work for your champion and it's stolen, that's as bitter as it gets, is it not? And I can understand why people are despondent. I can understand how gutting that is. I feel it too, people. I can understand it. But we have no choice here. We have got to save this country for our kids.
Yes.
With no choice.
Grandchildren.
I want you every day, and I know you probably do this every single day, you get up and you look at your desk and you think, what am I going to do today? And you have a photograph of your kids and your grandchildren on there, and you ask yourself, what am I going to do today so that you may live free?
Yes.
It's a question you need to ask every single day, folks, because it's up to you. And if you think it's tough, and it is tough, I know. I'll tell you one thing though, before I get to the tough stuff, being part of the Patriot movement finds you the best friends you'll find anywhere.
Amen. Yes.
You'll meet the people you will never meet any other way. You can have conversations and support with people who share your values and are willing to fight for them. They are my friends, folks. They're not the people you play golf with or the people you play bridge with. They're the people in the trenches with you. And they're the best friends you will ever meet. So, you think back, you think it's tough now. You think, I was in Morristown, New Jersey a few months ago, and that was where your troops spent the winter of 1780. And that was a little ice age, people. That was bitter. 10,000 troops started that winter, and death, desertion, and disease took 4,000 of them. The officers were eating their dogs to survive. The troops were boiling their boots to eat the leather. They weren't paid for months. The farmers hated them because they'd stolen every chicken for 20 miles around. They went through that winter and they were starving on the verge of defeat. And think about this, people. Why was the Revolutionary War started? Was it over tea taxes? Was that the reason? It was because people had fled Europe to escape religious tyranny, to escape religious suppression. You had 13 colonies here, every one run by a different religious denomination. And they had crossed the Atlantic and lost most of their people and starved for years to build up a nation where they could worship according to their conscience. Amen. And when King George started breaking his agreements with the colonies and started coming for their freedoms, they knew they were going to get a state church. They knew he was going to take away their religious liberties, and they were not going to have it. Almost all of the commanders in your Revolutionary War were pastors, folks. The black-robed regiments, the famous pastors with a Bible in one hand and a long rifle in the other. And they fought year after year after year. They were beaten in virtually every battle. They were chased across every state, dodging British bullets, eating berries, walking through the snow barefoot. For year after year after year, away from their families for months at a time. And maybe once in a blue moon, they would get to go home, and maybe all they would find would be a burnt out barn and some graves. And they went year after year. Do you think they understood the amazing country they were creating for you? Do you think they had any idea of what they were achieving? All they had was this wacky, crazy idea that had never been tried before, that your rights came from God, not the king. That's what they did it for, folks. And look what they built for you. All that sacrifice. So you're looking at a second American Revolution, folks. And you're in there. I'm asking you to double down. I'm asking you to give everything that's within you for your God, your country, and your kids. Is anything more important to you than those things? Give it everything you've got. Because if you give it everything that's within you for your God and your King and your country, two things may happen. One, you may give it everything that you have, and maybe we still lose. It's always a possibility. But at least you will all earn the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could for you.
That's right.
But what is that worth to you, folks? See, at the real depth, after Morristown, New Jersey, George Washington went out to Valley Forge and he got down on his knees and he prayed, folks. And he got up and he went on to take the British out at Yorktown in a surprise attack when everybody thought your army was done. When everybody thought it was over, he went out there in a bold move. He took the British out. He changed the course of the war and the course of world history. And look what he gave you. Well, I'm saying we are in such a time now, folks, things look pretty dark. And maybe we lose this. Maybe. But if you give it everything you've got for your God and your country and your kids, we may get a miracle. We may get a miracle. And you could win this, folks. That 2016 election to me was a miracle. That proved to me that God is not finished with this country yet, folks. But we got to stand up. And if you're faithful, if you lack courage, it's because you lack faith. If you have faith, you have courage. They go together.
It's contagious.
It is. It's very contagious. So people, this is what I'm saying. Dig deep. Because this is the time that we can win. This is the time we can come from behind and win this. If you give it everything you've got, for everything you believe in, we can win this. We can spark an economic boom like you've never seen. We can spark a liberty boom, not just in this country, but all around the world. And you will earn the right to pass on to your children and your grandchildren, not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth a little sacrifice, folks? So I want to say to you folks, thank you so much for what you do for America, for my country, and for liberty. God bless America, God bless California, and God bless all of you. Thank you so much. This was Democrats, so they're up there storming it, and they're out there stealing the stuff. But this isn't. So, look, I just want to say I'm proud to be amongst you folks. I know what you do, and I'm glad to be here. But does anybody have a question at all?
I have one, sir.
Well, if you can come up here, sir, that'd be great. Remind me to tell you my Tea Party story too.
I've got one question, and that's all.
Yeah.
If I can speak into it.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What is going to happen to us in China if China goes after Taiwan?
I think they're going to go after us. I think the China thing is just a feint. Look, if the Chinese go after Taiwan, Biden will do nothing. You know, I believe he will do virtually nothing. He might make some noises, he might make a resolution in the United Nations, but he will do nothing. You know, right now, Australia and India and that, they're trying to work together to counter China. But all your allies are freaking out because China has its friend in the White House. It's a horrible situation. Yes, sir.
Now the Republicans are beginning to divide. They want to form a third party.
Say that again?
The Republicans want to divide and begin a third party.
Yeah, well, that's not really the Republicans. That is the rhinos. There's about 100 rhinos want to form a third party. We will get absolutely nowhere. But they might get 1% of the vote, which might make it difficult for us. But they're just contemptible. You know, and look, you look at the Liz Cheneys of the world and the Mitt Romneys, they think they're so morally superior. You know, don't they? They just think we are above the fray. We don't get down in the gutter like that Trump fellow. The Trump fellow that did so much good for America when they did nothing all the years they had a chance to. You know, Mitt Romney, who could have won the 2012 election, who had Obama on the ropes after the first debate, then let him go, and we paid 4 more years for his gutlessness. And he is so morally superior to President Trump. It's absolutely contemptible.
He threw the fight.
He threw the fight, absolutely he did, you know. And Trump's got a few rough edges, but he's done more good for this country than anybody else I can remember for a very long time. And I'm proud to say I'm a supporter. And I was a late supporter, people. I was a Ted Cruz guy. I didn't like Trump, and because I didn't think Trump would do what he said he was going to do. And I was so happy to be proven wrong.
I was asking about goods and services.
Sorry?
Goods and services. Okay. From the beginning, since 1997, Hong Kong went back to China.
Yeah.
Okay, and they were promised 50 years of their system.
Yeah.
You know, where they would the Beijing government said, okay, you can have Hong Kong, you can have your ways, and now, and I guess I've been seeing the news about Hong Kong, and I think they're trying to take their freedoms away from Hong Kong. And I just want to know.
Look, Hong Kong is now part of China. It's
Right,
under the same system.
but I just thought, because they have their own system. I mean, I think in my opinion I think that if China's gonna let Hong Kong keep their capitalist system, I think our government should step in and say, hey, Hong Kong should be,
Well, our government should, but our government is not going to. They wouldn't have done this under Trump.
Right.
They wouldn't have dared. Look, Trump probably would have made Taiwan the 51st state,
Just remind you, thanks for the heads up, because if I see anything made in China, I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hello.
Any recommendations on what we should do today regarding supporting our ally Israel?
Everything you can. Hold a pro-Israel rally downtown. Fly the Israeli flag. Get out there and say you're proud to stand with Israel, even if our government is not. Look, everything you can do. If Israel goes down, we're in deep trouble, and it's just a matter of decency. They're our ally, they're our friend, they're our gatepost in the Middle East. Every communication you can, every way you can get a rally going, or any way you can show support, do so. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What can we do to get all these immigrants on our side? Now, they are fleeing their countries for a reason.
Yeah.
So they want to be free. So I wish we could get them, some way we could get them on our side.
Yeah, well, look, you've got the group over here, Melting Pot Patriots, which is doing exactly that, because most of the immigrants are more socially conservative than the actual Americans that are already here. But the Democrats pounce on them the minute they get into the country. They either put them on benefits or give them handouts, or they'll tell them, look, this is what they'll say. They'll say, the Republicans, that means People's Republic of China. They support China. We're democratic. We support democracy. They lie to them. You've got all these Spanish language radio stations out there pumping unending communism into the Latino populations. Look, the Republicans have ignored these people for years. This is the grassroots, form alliances with the local ethnic communities. They are freaking out now because they see what is on the horizon. So now is the time to reach out to them, invite them to meetings like this, have roundtables with them, say how can we work together to move our communities in more of a conservative direction.
Yeah, because I know a lot of Hispanics and they're not for Biden.
No, they're not.
No.
You know, they love Trump, a lot of them. You know, but the Democrats caught them. Look, I just want to tell you the Tea Party story before I wrap up. I know people have got to get away. This is how the Tea Party saved America many times. Now, in 2011, I think it was, or 2013, the Republicans had passed amnesty through the Senate, right? They were going to give 20 million illegal immigrants the right to vote, which would have given the Democrats complete control of America. And I was up in Jim, who's the guy from Oklahoma who became the head of NASA? Jim, no, he was a congressman from Oklahoma who became the head of NASA. I've forgotten his name, but I was up in his office and he said to me, Trevor, as a Capitol Hill, he said, Trevor, the Republicans are going to pass amnesty through the House on Friday. And I say, do they know this is a suicide of America? They know what it's... So no, they don't really see it that way, and they get a lot of money from the Chamber of Commerce, which wants cheap labour. They're going to pass it. And I walked out of that office totally depressed. I think that was a Monday. Well, on the Tuesday, they had a by-election for a seat in Virginia. Eric Cantor versus Dave Bratt. And that election was all about immigration and amnesty. And Eric Cantor was number 3 in the Republican House and had $5 million. Dave Bratt had $200,000 and 200 Tea Party volunteers. And he beat Eric Cantor by 8 points. Destroyed it, and amnesty was dead the next day. Because all the rhinos freaked out and thought we'll get thrown out of office by the Tea Party. So amnesty was destroyed. 200 Tea Party volunteers with a little bit of money saved this country. You know, if it wasn't for you, Obama would have kept the House in 2010. We would have had immigration amnesty and full-on Obamacare straight away if it wasn't for the Tea Party. The Tea Party is the most important political movement we've seen in this country in 100 years, folks. Never underestimate your importance, ever. Now, one more question, sir.
How are you doing, Trevor? My name
Good.
is Sammy Mendoza. I kind of have a question about something that happened to us kind of recently at UC Davis. So I'm a graduate of UC Davis.
Okay.
My buddy here, Ken, he's a student also. Sorry. But essentially, so what happened to us, we went to an anti-cop protest on campus to gather some footage and ask some questions and stuff like that.
He's a little taller than the microphone.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we went to the anti-cop protest to gather footage and get some opinions and just, just tackle this, what's going on, why do you guys oppose cops so much? So it kind of turned out to be a major argument, especially once I put on my MAGA hat. Everyone started crowding me and attacking me like insects. But then it turned out that a Professor Joshua Clover, who is a professed Marxist, he's been in the news a lot. He's been quoted saying things like, cops cannot be reformed, they all just need to be killed. So what happened to me and my buddy here, we were assaulted by this mob on campus at the quad at a public event. The professor himself grabbed a rock from the ground, using it to guide us and hitting our equipment with it. So essentially what happened is assault and battery, with all these students following his lead and crowding us. I was put in a full Nelson hold. They pushed us. They were telling us to leave. They were chanting, "Fascists go home, fascists go home." So what we've been doing is we put up our video on YouTube because we documented the whole thing. YouTube has now removed the video. And then we also sent a complaint down to the HTA, which is a discrimination department. They have not gone back to us. We both sent our accounts. We sent them footage. We sent them video. We have even the rock in his hand hitting our equipment on video. We contacted the Chancellor's office, the Chancellor of UC Davis, Chancellor May. His office has not responded to us. No one seems to get back to us. We put a report with the police, and the police haven't gone back to us either. Which is crazy because we do support the police, but it's just here at Davis. So I just kind of want to know where we go from here because.
Well, you can send the video to me and I'll get it to Epoch Times and maybe they will do something with it. The other thing is to get a lawyer who will do a civil rights case. Because civil rights cases are hard to turn down. Try and get a lawyer like, and I could probably give you some names to people approach who will do a pro bono civil rights case against the university. Because that's about as egregious as a case that I can imagine. And you've got documentary evidence, but you need to break through the wall of silence. That's what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that, so thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll see what I can do. Thank you. Well, thank you, and I praise your courage too, sir, because it's not easy to go into an unfriendly environment and challenge a whole bunch of people want to kill you. It's not easy. So look, I'll be over there. Please get the books and DVDs. We're in a war. You need to know who your enemy is, and those books will tell you who their enemy is. The DVD was seen 3 million times on Amazon Prime with no advertising, but they took it down 2 weeks before the election. And it will even convert Bernie crats. Okay, so it's good. Oh, Laverne, sorry, one more.
I just wanted to share so that everybody knows. I have a picture that one of our Tea Party members took, Yuba College, on their big marquee, Black Lives Matter. It's on the marquee.
Yeah. Look, you got wherever you got a college, you got nests of Marxism. And so that's the problem. You haven't got a college in this town, have you? Make sure you never get one. But, I don't know. But so, look, we're in a battle, but God is on our side if we stand up and be faithful. That's what we got to rely on. That's our hope here. So I praise your courage and good on you, sir. It's not easy to do. And look, just keep on standing up, folks. Because you have an impact even if you don't always see it. What we do is watched. And people and heaven watches what we do. So thanks very much. Please come and see me at the table. I'm honoured to talk to you. Very glad to be here. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.